Hazel and Holden had been acquainted since they were kids. Their mothers were good pals, so the kids spent loads of time together. Teenage years and attending universities in distant cities led to a long separation. When Holden was 25, he returned to his hometown. Emotionally drained, the years working a job he despised had taken a toll, and on top of that, his girlfriend Piper had broken up with him. She said Holden had started acting like an old man, coming home from work, stuffing his face, and then binge-watching TV shows until the wee hours. His mom was over the moon to have him back. Deep down, she had always wished for his return, though she never admitted it. She didn't want to tie him down. As time ticked by, Holden settled comfortably into his old new environment, landed a job, and life started to look up. He frequently hung out with friends and cherished spending time with his family. Holden's mom, though, was quite concerned about the lack of a lady in his life, but he kept brushing it off, saying he wasn't ready for another relationship after his last one. Aunt Reese is coming over tomorrow. You remember her? His mom said one evening while they were chatting in the kitchen. With Hazel, she added, with a mischievous smile and a wink at Holden. He rolled his eyes and replied, "Oh, come on, Mom, not this again. I've told you I'm not looking for a relationship right now." Holden, they're just guests. Who said anything about a relationship? Holden exhaled deeply, and his father, having just entered the kitchen, gave his shoulder a comforting pat. He understood quite well that once his wife set her mind to something, there was no diverting her from her path. The following morning found Holden seated at the dining table feeling supremely awkward. His accompanists were his parents, Aunt Reese, and Hazel. His mother and her companion were busily reminiscing over tales from the childhoods of Holden and Hazel that, frankly, seemed absurd and now, with the passage of time, only evoked embarrassment. "I think I'll catch some Z's," Holden announced, pushing his chair back and making his way to the balcony. He pulled the door shut, flicked his lighter to life, and inhaled sharply from his cigarette. Soon after, a knock sounded. "That you, Hazel? Can I come out?" she inquired. "A bit much, the walk down memory lane," Holden said, a smirk forming as Hazel nodded her agreement. They struck up a light conversation. Deep down, Holden found himself genuinely drawn to Hazel. She had been his childhood comrade, never once seen as a potential love interest. Yet here she was, transformed into a compelling young lady whose presence he found incredibly appealing. Quite spontaneously, and to his own surprise, he suggested they head out somewhere private, away from prying ears and the ludicrous tales of youthful mischief. She was on board. This marked the start of their courtship, a journey that proved challenging for Holden. He grappled internally with his lingering feelings over his split with Piper and the fear of entrusting his heart to another. 1 year on, Holden and Hazel took the plunge and moved in together. Another year passed, and wedding bells rang. The celebration was most heartily rejoiced by Holden's mother, who had, 2 years earlier, plotted to kindle this very union. Holden was a diligent worker, self-employed in his own petite workshop, where he fixed household appliances. His business was still sprouting and demanded substantial investments, so he took on a part-time gig as a sales consultant. Hazel, on the other hand, served as a barista in a neighborhood coffee joint. She ardently supported Holden's ambitions to nurture his enterprise and lent a hand wherever she could. Despite the tremendous time devoted to the store and workshop, Holden made it a point to shower his wife with attention. Their abode perpetually blossomed with vibrant flora, and on weekends, he endeavored to whisk Hazel away from the city to relish nature's embrace or indulge in a cafe outing. As Holden's business flourished, prompting his resignation as a consultant, he found himself with more freedom. However, he began to notice a recurring pattern. Hazel would frequently return from work late. On occasion, she would linger till the late hours of the night, attributing her tardiness to jovial get-togethers with her gal pals or accounting responsibilities at the coffee shop. Holden was enamored with his wife and reposed unwavering trust in her. One fateful day, while mending an elderly couple's television set, They exuded such charm and showered Holden with kindness that he gladly offered to deliver the repaired TV to their abode. Holden got caught up at work, resulting in a delay. When he eventually set out to fulfill the delivery, it was approximately 10 o'clock in the evening. Unbeknownst to him, Hazel's coffee shop shut its doors at that hour. Navigating the travel duration in his mind's eye, Holden was joyous to discover that he had ample time to reach the coffee shop just moments before closing time and fetch his beloved wife. As the husband arrived, his heart sank upon discovering that the coffee shop had already shut its doors, just as he reached for his phone to dial his wife's number. A heart-wrenching sight unfolded before his eyes. There she was, strolling out onto the street with her boss Gunnar by her side. Holden longed to honk his horn and draw their attention, but alas, time betrayed him. His eyes fixated on Gunnar as he pulled Hazel towards him, planting a passionate kiss upon her unsuspecting lips. The forbidden intimacy was painfully familiar to Holden. It wasn't Gunnar who had crossed the line, but rather their customary behavior. In a fleeting moment, they both climbed into the car and vanished into the night. Overwhelmed with emotions, Holden took a moment to allow a few passing cars to shield him from potential notice, before cautiously trailing after their disappearing figures. Gunnar's vehicle came to a halt outside a modest hotel, just 2 blocks away from the now-closed coffee shop. Holden's heart shattered into 1,000 fragments of comprehension, causing him to make a swift retreat from the scene. He sought refuge elsewhere that night, absent from the comforts of his own home. Awakening the following day, nestled within his parked car, Holden's weary eyes were met with a message from his wife gracing his phone screen. "Where are you? I'm worried." Gently rubbing his eyes, the events of the previous night flooded back into his consciousness. He was not prepared to address his wife, nor did he have the strength to encounter her at present. Yet the course of action seemed inevitable. Stepping foot into their shared living space, Holden beheld his anxious wife awaiting him in the kitchen. "Why weren't you home?" she questioned, her voice laced with concern. Suppressing the knowledge of her transgressions alongside Gunnar, Holden resolved to catch her red-handed once more, keen on witnessing her expression in that very moment. "Fell asleep at work, caught up in a challenging repair project," he replied tersely, concealing the torment brewing within his soul. For a whole week, Holden observed Hazel's actions as she made her way to work. However, every time, sensing his watchful gaze, she would venture out alone and return home without any company. Once home, arguments between them became frequent. Holden, fueled by anger, would lash out at Hazel, and she in return would raise her voice. Holden persisted in following her every time she left work. Then, one fateful day, he noticed Gunnar's car parked outside a coffee shop and decided to enter. This happened just half an hour before the coffee shop was due to close. Holden found himself in a dilemma. Should he storm in, confront them, disclose his knowledge of their affair, or wait until they emerged? As her husband pondered over his course of action, Hazel and Gunnar emerged from the coffee shop. Hazel seemed to be laughing at something, whilst Gunnar couldn't take his eyes off her, clearly captivated by Holden's wife. Eventually, Hazel turned towards Gunnar, and without hesitation, he gently ran his fingers through her hair and firmly pressed his lips against hers. Reacting impulsively, Holden burst out of his car, forcefully shutting the door with a resounding echo. Gunnar and Hazel instinctively pulled away from each other, their eyes fixed on him. Gunnar, still grasping Hazel's hair, prevented her from escaping his hold. His arrogant gaze aimed at Holden seemed to silently challenge him, daring him to take action. They stood frozen like that for a few seconds. Eventually, Hazel managed to break free from Gunnar's grip and hurried towards her husband, desperately pleading, "Holden, it's not what you think. I love you." She tried to reach for her husband's hand, but Holden forcibly pushed her away. "Do you love him too? Or is your relationship just fueled by ulterior motives? Is that what he paid you for your work?" Holden roared, seething with rage. He turned around and walked back to his car. Hazel chased after him, shouting, "Get out." Do you have any idea how long it took me to get used to you? How long have I been fighting? Why couldn't you have told me from the beginning? Why all this deception? Holden pushed Hazel hard, causing her to lose her balance and fall to the sidewalk. Get out, he growled again. Filled with resentment towards his unfaithful wife, he took all her belongings out of their apartment before officially filing for divorce. Hazel did not grieve for long and soon married Ganner. However, a few years later, Ganner also ended their relationship after learning about her infidelity. As for Holden, his mother was deeply shocked by the whole ordeal, severed all ties with her friend, and constantly wondered how a daughter like Hazel could be raised. Holden longed for change. His soul yearned for something new. He decided to leave his hometown, selling his modest apartment to pay for moving abroad. He wanted to start over, leaving a thriving business under his father's leadership. Hazel, moody by nature, was abandoned. Her friends turned away from her, and men, after learning about her 2 failed marriages, began to doubt their willingness to maintain a relationship with her. After all, a reasonable man wouldn't leave a good wife and date a bad one.